Thank you, Brian. Guys, I can't get my special background up, but at least I'm in a green room. So,
Oh,
how are you, Maria?
I'm good. I'm good. Can you hear me okay?
Yep,
Okay,
I can hear you great.
wonderful. Wonderful. I got a little chat asking if my mic was on, so I want to make sure we don't start with any technical difficulties this morning.
Yeah, right. Yeah, well, it's not a weekday without a technical difficulty.
Exactly. Exactly. How are you this morning?
I'm doing great. Thank you, everybody who's joining for our chat. Maria and I have a lot to talk about. I'm a big Jordan fan, so it's a real honor for me to get to speak with Maria about what fuels her major success for the brand. So I'm just going to jump in. Does that sound good?
Let's do it.
So Maria, tell us about you and your background and how you came into this role as the global manager of Jordan brand for Nike, which is like a dream job.
It's a pretty special place to be. I will not deny that. Um, I am actually a small town kid, and when I used to say where I was from, people kind of look back at me with this blank stare. And then this show came out on Netflix called Ozark, and suddenly everybody wanted to talk about where I was from, which was quite the unexpected turn of events, I think, for all of us who are from there. But I grew up, our family business was a restaurant, not that different from the one in the show, although I will say it was significantly less exciting. But that's where, at a young age, I started working in the family business, and I built my foundational understanding of hard work and accountability and kindness and compassion. My mom ran the back of the house, and she was up every single morning prepping for the day, and then she stayed until the floors were mopped and the restaurant closed at night. And then my dad, who everybody called Coach, had this really incredible talent for seeing people's potential and helping them really tap into that. He took chances on a lot of kids who didn't otherwise have a lot going on, and those are the skills that I have really tapped into, the skills that got me through my undergraduate degree at the University of Missouri, that helped me get my first job at a digital ad agency, and the things that really took me to where I am today. So growing up, I didn't have a lot of resources or connections to get to where I am, but those skills and those foundational traits are really what got me here.
We are a restaurant family as well. My husband is a
Oh,
restaurateur. Yeah. And I came up in the publishing world, and I used to tell everybody two things. One, I learned everything I need to know about sales and marketing from being a bartender,
yes.
right?
Big facts there.
How do you entertain a whole room of people and keep them engaged with you and get them to pay you? That's marketing. And
Mm-hmm.
always take a chance on somebody from the hospitality industry, right? I
Absolutely.
think you learn so many skills from doing that work that, I think everybody who's on this call right now is probably in the middle of trying to hire somebody. We know what the
Mhm.
workforce is like right now. Take a chance on somebody from hospitality because they have the skills.
Oh, could not agree more. And those skills are the real life skills that you just can't teach people. I think there's so much value in that.
So tell me about what it's like to work at Jordan Brand. I mean, it's such an iconic brand that has managed to traverse that space between like legacy and continued relevance, I guess I would say. Tell me about that.
I mean, it's a privilege, like period, full stop. I had this moment last week when I was driving to campus, and it just hit me. I was like, holy shit, this is my job. I work here. And that's really humbling. And, there are a couple of things that I really, really love about working in a brand like this, at a company like this. And you kind of nailed it. We're really always thinking about what's next. And the thing that I love is that I'm constantly learning and growing and being challenged to think differently and made to feel uncomfortable. And as I'm saying this out loud, I'm also realizing I don't love being uncomfortable all the time. It's a little bit more of a hindsight love, but that just idea of being able to experiment and try new things and take risks is super special. And then the other thing is, there's something to be said about working in a brand that people really love. I worked in telco for a bit, and I will tell you, people are not flocking to the internet to talk about how much they love their cell phone providers. So to be a part of a brand that really means something to people, a brand that is a part of their personal identity and shapes the way that they see themselves. I mean, it's a marketer's dream, and it unlocks so much potential for us because we don't have to be reactive. We can push boundaries and we get to try new things, and it's a really inspiring place to work.
I want to dive into that a little bit about risk
Sure.
taking and trying new things, because it's something, you know, at Dash Hudson, we provide analytics to all of these different companies in beauty, fashion, retail, CPG, food. And one of the biggest pieces of advice that I find myself giving to our partners at brands is get more comfortable with risk taking, right? Things are always going to be changing. And I think the younger generation, you know, I hate to, I was young recently, I'm not anymore. The way they communicate in the new spaces, right? Like TikTok in particular, I think there's a certain level of comfort with risk taking, right?
Sure. Yeah, agree.
There's like I think people expect some experimentation. So I'd love if you have a story or an example of a way you were able to, whether it's encourage your team to take a risk or a story about how you did take a risk and whether or not it paid off. I think that's useful for fellow marketers to hear.
Sure. Yeah. I was listening to this incredible podcast that a friend of mine sent all about the idea of, negotiation. And he talks a lot about risk in that. And he talks about building up your risk resilience. And a practice that he uses is asking for things that he really shouldn't get. So the example is he meets one of his mentees for coffee. I think it's his birthday. And the barista's like, oh, you get a free pastry. And he's like, oh, well, can I have one for my mentee? And the barista's like, I don't know. Like, I probably need to ask my manager. It's like, okay, go ask. He doesn't need or deserve or have any reason to have this free coffee or pastry for his mentee, but he practices those moments to build up resilience. And I don't think that we often think about risk in that way. But the more comfortable we become with trying things and experimenting and seeing what happens in every aspect of our life, the easier it gets in our work. And something that came to mind in my recent experience is when we all started working from home, we're all hit with this idea of how do we connect with people? How do we create marketing with meaning? And we, had this beautiful opportunity around the Last Dance to bring the sneaker community together. And so we stood up an Instagram live show. And we did it quickly, and we weren't really sure if it would work or how people would react or if they would be engaged. But we felt like it was a great opportunity to try, because culturally everybody was kind of trying new things to connect with their friends, to connect with their family. And as marketers, our job is really to create moments of human connection. So we leaned into that. We gave it a shot, and it performed really well for us. We definitely learned a lot about back-end technical production. And we had some moments that were pretty stressful when things just weren't working as we're trying to go live. But all in all, when I think back on it, all of those things that I was so worried about and so stressed out about feel really insignificant now. And I think that perspective is helpful for us. What's the real impact of something if it doesn't go that well? And of course, there are real risks and things that we do, and I'm not trying to downplay that. But just having a little bit of perspective of the scale and the reality of that risk, I think, is helpful.
I'm interested to hear how you measure success in general, but we can keep talking about that example. Like, how did you measure the success of that Instagram live execution? And is there a way that you measure success across all of your initiatives, or does it change?
Sure. Yeah. Great question. It does change, of course, because most initiatives have different objectives. And so we are really building our plans based on those objectives and measuring success against them. I will be the first to admit it was difficult to measure success because we hadn't done anything like that before. So there was no real benchmark for us. But as we progressed through the show and as we progressed through those live streams, we started to build a benchmark and understand how things were performing along the way. And in those moments, of course, we're looking at our engagement, viewership, peak concurrent viewers, the total amount of time that people were spending with us to get a sense for what was bringing people in and how long they were staying. And to kind of go back to your original question, it absolutely varies because engagement might not always be the key metric. And something that we really push our team to think about is what is that meaningful metric? Not, I see a lot of marketers sometimes looking for that big stat, like first ever something or the other, or highest engagement in X, Y, and Z. And that certainly can be powerful if it's leading to your ultimate goal and your ultimate objective. So we really try to push for meaningful KPIs too that dig a little bit deeper.
Yeah, and using the KPIs themselves for learnings, right?
Yes.
Like, I love what you said about, like, okay, so we saw that there was engagement during this time. What can we get out of that? Like, that's not the end of the story, right?
No, certainly not. And that was something really beautiful about that experience is we were building week over week.
Mm-hmm.
So we could really take things and sort of immediately apply those optimizations as we moved on to the next. And that's something that I really value about the team I'm on now is we are really focused on a test and learn mindset. And it's so empowering because you feel confident in progress. Each iteration feels like you're getting better and better and better along the way. And you're also empowered when you have a misstep because you can quickly say like, oh, we need to pivot into something else. And you can do that without much of a lag.
Yeah, it's creating an environment of psychological safety too, right?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
I mean, when we met each other, we talked about being a woman in marketing, right? And how important that is. What's it like being a woman at Jordan Brand?
It's a beautiful, beautiful time to be at the brand. I feel so fortunate in my overall career journey because I've had so many amazing female managers and mentors. I think we might have talked about this when we connected, but I had this manager who once told me she would let me fail, but never fail big. And it was really incredible to know that she had my back, but she also wasn't going to be in the weeds. She was really going to kind of let me do my thing and learn and grow. And, working in sports is, of course, challenging. Working in corporate America is challenging. It's a male dominated space, full stop. But I do feel really privileged to have had some incredible mentors, some male allies, and people who have helped push and guide me along the way. And in Jordan Brand, like we're really focused on advancing equity for women, and to be a part of that and to have a seat at the table for that, it's a dream to be able to really say my job is to help provide a platform for women to feel seen and to feel heard. Like, gosh, it makes you really want to go to work every day.
I totally agree. It's a privilege to be where we are right now and at this very time and space, right? Where we can actually do this stuff. Okay, well, this is supposed to be about marketing innovation. So let me try. Let's talk about marketing innovation, but I think we can make a good transition here. Let me try. So we know that there's a burgeoning, not even burgeoning anymore. There's a new market for sneakers, right? Whether it's cross-generational or, different genders buying into sneakers. So I want to hear about how you're able to market to new consumer segments and what you guys are doing to try and expand that.
Yeah, it has been absolutely incredible to just watch how sneaker culture has evolved over time. It started really niche and sort of this like rebel mindset, sort of underground, like if you know, you know, and now it's so pervasive in everything that we do and everywhere that we go. And when we think about our audience and how we tap into that, we've got, people who have been with us from the very, very start, the OGs who know the history of the brand, quite frankly, better than sometimes we do. And then you have maybe a more casual sneaker enthusiast who's just starting out or who got into sneakers because, they saw somebody like Travis Scott or Billie Eilish wearing sneakers. And so for us, we are really focused on how do we create moments of connection, regardless of where you are in your sneaker journey. If you've got a deep stack and a huge collection, or if you've got one or two pairs, Your knowledge about the space is different. The things that get you excited are different. And as a newbie, the history and the heritage might feel really sort of overwhelming. It's fascinating. Something we talk about a lot is the fact that the younger generation wasn't alive to see MJ play. And I definitely feel you, what you said earlier, like, yeah, I was young once. But that in and of itself creates a really beautiful opportunity for us to say, okay, then what matters? Because this younger generation is signaling to us that they like sneakers, they're interested in sneaker culture, but how do we connect with them? And those are some of the ongoing tests and pilots that we're exploring too, to figure out what really matters to people.
Mm. I just think that's a great point. What matters to the audience is actually the most important thing.
Oh, absolutely.
In terms of how you're communicating your storytelling, are there any sort of formats or channels or anything new that you're excited about that you're testing now?
There are a whole host of different platforms that we're looking at, and my role currently is really focused on our sneakers app and neighborhood. And so something that we rolled out, I guess it was right around this time last year, is a capability called Sneakers Live. And there are so many robust engagement opportunities that we're testing there and figuring out how do we create more of a two-way dialogue between our brand and the community. So that's something that I get really excited about. I see so much potential and opportunity there. And then of course, my counterparts across the marketing team are exploring all kinds of new and emerging platforms, and really trying to understand where we can make the biggest impact. I think, something that's really challenging as a marketer is this pressure to be everywhere all the time. And we're not staffed for that, and we're not resourced for that. And sometimes we don't need to be everywhere at all times. And so I feel very grateful to have a full marketing team around me and being able to work with them and assess, okay, where can we as a team lean in? Where is our audience? Where are they spending their time? How are they spending their time? And then collectively come back with a point of view of where we can win and where we can really connect.
And it's okay to say no
Oh,
sometimes.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think there's just so many, even within, first of all, we're kind of all at the mercy of the platforms, right? And then they keep launching new functionality, and it's really, it can feel extremely overwhelming, and it gets super complex as a marketer for where you're going to show up. And I think
Absolutely.
going back to marketing 101, understanding your audience and what your story is will filter out all that noise. Like, sure, testing and learning is important. Try making a reel, see if it works for you, but you don't have to be everywhere all the time.
Oh, couldn't agree more. And, there's so much value in platforms that have scale, and there's also a lot of value in those more niche platforms. And if you're sitting at a small brand right now and you're thinking to yourself, I don't have the resources to go out and explore all of these new platforms and activate on them, I think something that can help you fuel your strategy is just being there to listen, understanding how people are talking about your brand in Reddit forums or on Discord or any of those other more niche platforms can fuel the rest of your marketing strategy. You don't have to be active everywhere, but if you can find the places where your community is really active and listen and lean in, you can use those insights to fuel some of the places where you and your brand can make more of an impact.
Yeah, I think people forget. I mean, there's a lot of talk about quote unquote social listening. And sometimes to me, that doesn't feel like actually listening. Like you, right? Like, yes, you could, sure, you get like a word cloud or something, but like you really need to read the Reddit thread, really read it.
I mean, when you are in a good headspace and you're ready for what the internet's going to throw at you, yes, absolutely.
You have to. It's like, just do it in the evening, have a drink, like whatever you need to do to hit through it. But like that, there's always going to be, to me, like a human element to listening and communicating with people. And we can build tools. I mean, we're always, Dash Hudson, thinking about how we're building those tools. And like, at the end of the day, it's about making it easier for you to take in that information, but you still have to take it in. It's never going to be fully automated. Otherwise, that's just not the work, I think.
I couldn't agree more. And that listening really grounds us as marketers. you know, we get thrown a ton of information. We're put under a lot of pressure. We are constantly obsessing our brand, and sometimes it can be difficult to stay connected to the real world. And so that listening really grounds you in what's happening out there, and it can validate and, you know, prove your hypotheses, or it can disprove them, and
Mm.
give you new spaces and things to explore and test. So there's so much value that you can gain from that listening.
And talk about like something that the sneaker category does so well is building community through listening, I
I
think.
mean, I think I have to give a ton of credit to the community. You know, they're
Mm.
doing it themselves. They're the ones who are really the driving force of culture in a lot of ways. And that's what I love about some, you know, platforms that are emerging and gaining momentum is they're really giving power back to the communities. They're democratizing influence and access. And so the communities that are creating culture actually have platforms where they can be heard. They're empowered to tell their stories and inspire others. And that's such a powerful thing that happens without us as a brand involving ourselves. And I just love that is sort of becoming more mainstream now, and it's also bringing some of that realness back to social media. You know, it's pulling back this veil and this idea of doing something for the gram that's been so pervasive in our culture, and creating a little bit more realness. And it's just so refreshing to see real people talking about their real lives, and having that all come together on these community platforms is really beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, I think God, doing it for the gram is so it's so pervasive and it's unhealthy,
Yeah.
frankly. When you start thinking about your day and like how would this translate in Instagram posts, like that's it's it's a big mindset shift, I think. And I work with a lot of like luxury and big, you know, corporate brands who I think there's still a lot of fear of democratization in that way, right? Like actually giving a voice to the audience instead of just finding the perfect creator to make your thing. Like it talk about risk taking, right?
Mhm.
Like I see a lot of luxury brands trying to take from sneaker culture just by doing collabs and opening up pop-ups, but really what you're getting at the heart of the culture is the community leading the conversation. And
Absolutely.
this
Mhm.
top-down communication, that's the big change in social media that's brought to the landscape as a marketer.
Yeah, it is. And it is scary, of course, because we as human beings feel much more comfortable when we're in control. And
Mm.
that's not a marketing thing, that's a human thing. And so to hand over control and trust, especially to someone maybe that you don't know, of course that's scary, that's natural. I don't think that anybody should feel shame for having those sort of reservations. But I would also challenge us to have a little bit more faith in people. It's been a really hard 18 months, and I know that we've all felt challenged by we've had our faith in humanity challenged at times, to say the least. And I do think that there is still beauty out there, and there are still incredible people. And if we put a little bit of faith back into those people, it can be really powerful.
I couldn't agree more. I knew this was going to be a great conversation. I do want to do a shout out to the Q&A. If anybody has any questions, you can start popping them in. There's a great one sitting in there that goes back to something we were talking about earlier, from an anonymous attendee, but I wish you'd put your name on it because it's a great question. So we're going to keep talking, but if you have any questions, please start popping them into the Q&A and we'll answer them. But a great question from Maria. What are some of the best things male allies can do?
Oh gosh. Thank you so much for asking that question. First of
Right.
all, I really appreciate that. Whomever you are, definitely feel empowered to attach your name to that. It's a really important question. There are so many things, but I think, you know, first and foremost, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, which is the idea of listening. Everyone's experience is different, and what I think we'll find at times when we listen is that we have a lot in common as well. So I have always felt so appreciative of my male allies who have listened, and then who have help speak up in those moments where maybe I couldn't. If you're in a room and you have an idea and that idea gets picked up by somebody else and that other person gets a lot of credit and excitement for that idea. I've had great allies who have said like, hey, yes, and thank you, Maria, for starting that conversation. I love where that's taking us. I think that there are just so many things, but that listening is really where I think we all need to start as an ally, regardless of gender.
Agreed. And making space, I think, is also too, in those settings, just taking a pause and making sure. Are you finished with your thought? Were you able to contribute? Does a small extra space can really yield a lot, and it's all good for business, right? The more voices in the room, the more actual diversity of opinions you have, the further your business goes.
Yes, definitely. So, and the more empowered your teammates and employees are to bring their whole selves to work, the better the work will be for it.
Yeah. I think about psychological safety all the time. And if it's a new term to anybody, just do a quick Google. It's really pretty impressive. And I think that goes across any sort of conversation about diverse opinions in the workplace and being able to bring your own self to work. Making everyone feel safe to contribute. It's all business imperative, actually.
Yes, it truly is.
Yeah, put dollar signs behind it. Oh, another good question. Oh my goodness. All these anonymous good questions. I'm not even going to read my questions because the questions being submitted by the audience are so much better than what we had on our list. So Maria, what's the biggest thing you want to do for the brand in the future?
Oh my goodness. That's a great question as well.
Oh.
I talked about it a little bit earlier, but kind of just doubling down on the idea of creating a more inclusive culture around sneakers, specifically when it comes to women and people of color. That to me is imperative because those groups have really been driving the culture forward, like we talked about. And creating those safe spaces and elevating those voices, that's something that is deeply important to me personally in the work that I do. And also, I think really important for the longevity of this culture and this brand.
Cool.
I love it. The crowd's coming with some great ones today.
I know, I'm very into it. So, we kind of talked about measuring success, but what are the most important things to you in terms of making strategic decisions? Is there any sort of data that you use over something else? And how do you really build a success? Again, this is such a big question. How do you build a successful omni-channel strategy? Go.
Yes, huge question. I think there are really two key pieces to it. One, if we're talking about building an omnichannel strategy, it really starts with the team that's building that strategy. And I don't think there's a right way per se, or necessarily a wrong way to staff your team. I've worked in organizations where I've been a holistic digital strategist looking across multiple platforms. In my role now, I have a really sharp focus. And again, I don't think that one is necessarily better or worse than the other. I think there are really great ways to work in both, but your team internally really does have to be set up and structured in a way that you can create an omnichannel plan, because omnichannel is really, kind of defined as something that is seamless. And if your internal team isn't seamless, your consumer is going to feel that as well. So that's a big piece of it. And then I'd say the second thing is really grounding yourself in a consumer-centric mindset and putting your customers, your members at the center of that, and looking across your channels and saying, okay, where are our consumers showing up? What do they need? What gaps can we fill? And then building your plan around that. If you're lacking that sort of consumer focus, it can become a slippery slope where you're marketing to marketers or you're marketing to your C-suite. And I've seen other brands in different places struggle a lot with that. So bringing that consumer data, those consumer insights, and really grounding yourself there first is absolutely critical to making that strategy come to life.
So what about your team structure works really well for you?
Oh gosh, I just feel so incredibly lucky to work with the team that I do. It has been, challenging for us because we've infused a lot of new folks into the brand, but they've really stepped in and stepped up and embraced their roles. There's so many brave people who are willing to ask questions and really seek to understand before they seek to be understood. And that idea is extremely powerful, and makes our teams work really well together. And I think another beautiful thing is when we all come together, we come as the experts in our space, with a curiosity too to understand what we might be missing, or where we could potentially think about those spaces in new and different ways. So everybody is coming to the table with different backgrounds and different experiences, and all of those things are valid. So I have to catch myself because I spent a lot of time working in social media, and sometimes I'll default to that and bring those thoughts to the table. But taking a minute to pause and say, hey, this is your space now. It's not mine. Let me know what you think is the best way. Have we maybe explored these things, thought about these ways of working? And having that kind of dialogue and that trust with each other is critical. It's something that I think our team does really well.
Cool. Yeah, that's a great answer. We have another good question in the chat. And this is about influencer marketing.
Okay.
So with the recognition of the Jordan brand, do you think any kind of influencer marketing or even micro influencer marketing is necessary? And this dovetails into part of your role as really getting into the local shops, right? So tell us, one, to answer the question about influencer marketing, and then let's talk about sort of micro influencers and targeting in that way.
Yeah, we have an incredibly talented entertainment marketing team in Jordan Brand, and that is just an art that I will be the first to admit I am not an expert in. But they have done such an incredible job over the course of this brand's existence of finding the right moments and times to authentically bring the brand to the forefront in some of the biggest stages. I think about the Super Bowl last year and what an incredible moment that was. And then to your question about, kind of scaling down into our neighborhood partners and some of those more micro influencers, they are the drumbeat of the community. That's where the, kids who are hopping into sneaker shops, or the OGs who see those shops as their community spaces, that's where they're really spending their time and their energy. And of course, that has massive influence. So the number one thing I always say is, like, it has to be authentic. We talk about that all the time. If we are going to partner with someone, they have to have an authentic connection to sneaker culture, and to the Jordan brand, because otherwise people are so smart these days. Marketing is not sneaky or tricky, nor should it be. And so rooting any kind of partnerships and that idea of authenticity is where we have to start.
How do you know? Right?
Yeah. If you know, And that's why I say, like, I'm so fortunate to have a team that is really skilled in this space. It's not my skill set at all. There are other things that I bring to the table. And so I lean on those teammates who are really either ingrained in their local communities and know who those micro influencers are, or my entertainment marketing team. They're pros at this stuff. And I have no problem saying that I'm not, because to say that I am would just be putting myself in a space where I won't succeed and undercutting the value that they bring to the table.
That's great answer. And thank you already to this crowd for asking such good questions. This is a hard one. Can you tell us, I know, so, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Can you tell us about any future products coming that are totally under wraps? So we have a sneakerhead in the crew.
I absolutely wish I could. I get so excited about some of the things that are on the forefront for this brand. I cannot. I wish I could. But of course, we have to keep those tightly wrapped, like you mentioned. So unfortunately, no secrets to be spilled here. But just be on the lookout for some great things coming.
Can we talk about Space Jam?
We absolutely can.
Did the new one have an impact at Jordan Brand?
Our teammates on the Nike basketball side really drove that strategy forward in partnership with, the film and LeBron. So I'll be the first to admit I wasn't as close to that work. But I definitely just love that nostalgia is back. I love to see some of those titles that were so big when we were kids coming around again, and I love the debate around the films and just all the cultural conversation that comes along with us. So for us in Jordan Brand, we really felt the impact of The Last Dance. And then I know our friends on the Nike basketball side were really able to have a lot of fun and do some great work around Space Jam.
Yeah, I think it's what's interesting is you're able to tap into these moments. One, because you're a brand with longevity, and Jordan Brand's been around for a while. But two, it goes back to what we were saying about listening and being ready for when something launches. Because I think you told me that The Last Dance came out faster than you expected, right?
It did, yeah. They came a few months earlier than any of us had planned for. Which is
Well,
months is a lot of time in the marketing world.
months is a lot, and I think the thing that resonates there for me is what a lot of our brand partners are seeing on TikTok now, right? A trend will come up today, and you have to make a choice whether you're going to participate in it or not. And if you wait too long, it's gone. You kind of miss it. So I think those moment by moment choices are happening for a lot of marketers right now.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's about going back to what you said earlier. It's about listening to what the community is saying and really having experts on your team who understand what the context is and can validate that, and being unafraid to experiment with something that might be brand new and fleeting and fast. It doesn't mean you have to jump on every single trend, right? But The Last Dance, I mean, of course it had an impact at Jordan Brand, but it came up a lot faster than you were prepared for.
Right. Yes, that list that you just went through is exactly right. The thing I would add to that is you have to know what your brand is, who your brand is, and what your brand stands for. There is definitely a difference in my mind between chasing a trend and testing and learning. And that distinction, I think, can really be rooted back in knowing where it makes sense for your brand to be. You don't have to be on TikTok if that platform doesn't make sense for your brand, if your audience isn't there. Don't try to force yourself into a platform and a place because you feel like you have to be. But if that is a space where your community is bringing your brand to life, know that, embrace that, lean into that, have fun with that. We don't have nearly enough fun as marketers. I always say it's shirts and shoes, and we should have fun with shirts and shoes. So the thing I would add to your list is just knowing what your brand stands for and where it makes sense. And then those fleeting moments are easier to make decisions around. Still tough, but a little bit easier.
That's a great point. I see Ryan is back, which means we are almost done. But I do have a request to share where people could find us and our companies on social media. So what are your handles, Maria?
You can find me, it's Civitate at XO. Wow, almost forgot my handle there for a minute. On Instagram, feel free to hit me up on LinkedIn as well. Definitely be sure to follow Jordan Brand at Jumpman23. And yeah, if you have more questions, definitely hit me up. Happy to connect with folks and make time to talk about marketing and the landscape or sneaker culture, whatever's on your mind.
Yeah, thank you so much. If anybody cares about hearing from me, you probably don't. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm Marie LaFrance, and follow at Dash Hudson. And yeah, anybody wants to connect about social media strategy or social data or just young women in the industry, I'm always happy to have those conversations too.
Don't sell yourself short. You were amazing. It has been such a pleasure to share the stage with you. It's incredible to have a conversation with another female leader in the space. So thank you for navigating this conversation today.
Thank you. You did all the heavy lifting. I appreciate it so much.
All right, Ryan, was it back to you now?
Back to me, handing it off. I appreciate it, Maria. Appreciate it, Marie. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. Definitely hit to our audience. Definitely hit up both Maria and Marie on social media and LinkedIn.